Hello and welcome to another Legions Imperialis video. Today I would like to discuss some information about the Solar Auxilia Marauder, specifically some of the variants, builds, and roles that it can be used at. As always, these images are Games Workshop's. I also want to give a special shout out to Damon Forge from the Discord for unknowingly helping me research some of the rules and gameplay interactions that I'll be discussing. First off, I'll discuss the Marauder chassis. This is a flyer unit for Auxilia that has a base movement of 24 inches. It has no close assault factor, as it is immune to melee. It has no morale value, so it does not become broken due to casualties. And each of those models has 1 wound per. It has a 3+ armor save, which is 1 better than most of the other Auxilia flyers. However, it does have a 5+ jinx save. That is notable because there are about 30 weapons or so that can be found on some of the Titans and even the Thunderhawk that have an AP of a 3 or better, where that will come in handy and increase its survivability. The big thing about the Marauder, however, is the 2 choice weapons that you can take, those being the Hellstrike missiles, Skystrike missiles, and Wing Bombs. First up is the Hellstrike missiles. This is a ground armor usage weapon that averages about 0.75 wounds per use. Keep in mind you can take 2 of those, so if you double up on that, it'll be about 1.5 wounds. For all of the builds we'll be discussing today, it does double up and create specific dedicated roles rather than a general purpose thing. Skystrike missiles are a little better at dealing with flyers, as they average about 1 wound per, and specifically that's only against armored flyers. The Wing Bombs are a little more all-purpose, so they have a lower average wounds, so 0.67, and that's against any non-flyer targets, infantry, walkers, or even some of those armor vehicles. The basic bomber, in addition to the 2 choice weapons, comes with a nose-mounted las cannon in the front arc, a heavy bolter turret in the rear arc with point defense, and a general-purpose bomb bay. For the build I've chosen for this one, I want to discuss the Overwatch bomber, which has been popular in my local meta. It's about 170 points for 2 of them. However, you can take a third one for a 10-point discount of 75 points. For this purpose, I will be choosing just the 2 of them. We'll kind of make this a little bit on a budget. With those 2 models, you can choose 4 Skystrike missiles. In a lot of other games, there's something called timing, and timing neutrality units are very important. And those usually being snipers or different things like that, where you don't have to go last with them. You kind of want to position them aggressively and things like that. The Overwatch bombers is a timing early thing. So if you get that early activation in the alternating activations, this is something you can position up early. You want to put these out there about 20 inches or maybe even a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on terrain and things like that. And what you're trying to do is affect the battlefield as much as possible. During those advance orders that you're giving them each turn, you'll want to shoot that bomb bay at a target that has positioned itself closer to or is offensively coming at you. And then maybe even use that point defense turret on the back during that movement or after the movement in order to just take a pot shot at something. Even though you probably won't get any hits off, or it's unlikely to get any hits off, you might as well throw the dice. You aren't going to get any wounds without it. The major benefit here, however, is to Overwatch the Skystrike. Those missiles have a 30-inch range, and you can actually expect to get about 3 wounds whenever you are shooting at something that is coming on, even on Overwatch. So, for example, here I've got 3 Xiphons shown up, and those interceptors only have a 24-inch range, so they'll have to move on into your threat range. And you get to shoot your Skystrikes before they even get to shoot their Xiphon weapons. Notably, you can expect to get those 3 wounds and destroy the entire unit before they even get to shoot at you, even though you activated first and have already shot other weapons. Alternatively, you can use the Lightning as an Overwatch platform. However, it does have a worse save by 1, so it's slightly less survivable. But I definitely recommend checking out the Overwatch tactic with some of these bombers or the Lightning. Next up is the Marauder Pathfinder. It does have a 2-inch less movement, so it goes down to 22-inch movement. It downgrades the las cannon and forgoes the bomb bay to gain the auger array special rule. It has a heavy bolter in the front arc with point defense and a rear arc heavy bolter point defense. This kind of creates an inefficiency because the attachment can only fire its point defense weapons once per round. And if it fires its point defense weapons in the movement phase. It cannot fire any of them in the combat phase. So if you're advancing with this thing, unless you're getting something in both your front and rear arc, you aren't going to be able to use both those heavy bolters. So here I've decided to highlight the Augur Array ability. And that is useful at 85 points to take one Pathfinder model. Since it's a single model detachment, it helps with kind of your order controls. You might actually out-activate somebody and get that last to first activation that can be important. And then Augur Array ability negates the penalty for shooting at units out of line of sight for friendly models with the barrage or heavy barrage keyword. At the time of this video, there is actually only one detachment for the Solar Auxilia and Astartes that has the barrage rule, and that is the Quad Launcher Rapier, when fired with the 30-inch or 6 to 30-inch profile, which is pretty good because you can field that in the exact same formation that you are using it. The others are going to be Knights and Titans, specifically the rocket pods on the Castoris Knight here, the Carachnus Mortar on the Acastus, the Shutter Missiles on the Warhound, the Reaver and Warlord Titans have the Apocalypse Missile, and the Warmaster and the Iconoclast have the Apocalypse Missile Array, and the Ardex Bombard, so it's actually got 2 on each of those. Next up is the Marauder Colossus. I featured this one in my structure collapsing video, as it is pretty powerful. This one also has a 22-inch movement, loses that 2 inches because of the bulkiness of the model. Same heavy bolter, front arc, point defense, and rear arc, point defense, heavy bolter. So it has the same heavy bolter inefficiency conundrum that you can kind of get. I recommend not getting too hung up on that because those heavy bolters are not actually great weapons, and just deal with it. Don't put yourself in a compromising position just to try to get 2 bolter shots off or something. However, this has the front-loaded damage in the Colossus Bomb. It's a single-use weapon that you can use, and it is very effective at structures and titans and things like that. So here I've decided to make a dedicated bomber build for a single Colossus. It's 85 points, and that comes with 2 wing bombs that we're going to choose. And we're going to always give this one march orders. And because of those march orders, we're giving it about a 44-inch threat as it marches the 22 inches times 2. And you're going to have a little bit on that base. But since those weapons are going to be in the rear arc, we're looking at a pretty decent threat range. The main reason for that is because the wing bombs and the bomb bay can be used on those march orders. So we're not worried about getting an advance order off because we don't have any weapons that we're too concerned about in that case. This is a timing sensitive variation of the bomber, and it is vulnerable to overwatch. Because you are trying to go in later in the turn or after something is positioned, maybe they've used overwatch orders on some of your other vehicles, you're going to want to use this at a time that is opportune to yourself and not putting it in vulnerable things. The benefit of this is it has multiple movement shots, and while you are moving with it, you can drop either the wing bombs or even the Colossus bomb, or both at different times and things like that. So you're going to want to prioritize some of the structures. Like if there's a structure in the center of the battlefield that you want to get rid of early, you can go ahead and bomb that. The other great use for this thing is as a Titan Hunter. With a 44-inch threat range from their march order, you can actually get into their rear arc where their shields are not effective. So if you want to take an alpha strike against a large Titan before it has activated, or maybe they hadn't realized it and chose not to overwatch your single bomber for 85 points, you could likely get 6 to 8 wounds off or destroy one of those larger 7-wound Titans. When using the wing bombs against ground targets, you can average about 1.33 wounds per set of 2 bombs in this case. It should be noted that the point defense heavy bolters, you can use that at the start or end of your activation for an additional 0.175 wounds, 0.17 wounds, unlike a softer target. Next up is the Marauder Destroyer. I'm a little torn on how I feel about this one, but the more I look at it, the more I like it. The notable difference is that it has a different tail structure on the actual model. That'll be a kind of defining feature on the Destroyer versus the Bombers. This one does cost an additional 10 points compared to the base models and all the other ones, and that's because it upgrades the las cannon to an autocannon, and that autocannon has front arc and gains the Skyfire trait. Has a heavy bolter turret in the rear with point defense, just like a couple of the others. It has a Destroyer bomb bay, which is actually a downgrade from the Marauder bomb bay. Of note, that goes from about 1 average wound to 0.67 on a standard target. However, you do gain a rear-facing assault cannon, which averages about half a wound versus armor and 0.75 wounds against non-armored targets. Of note, that autocannon does about double its effectiveness, so what you're giving up is a little bit of the bomb bay interaction for increased shooting power. In this case, I've chosen to highlight what I've called the Skyfire Destroyer build. So that's 95 points for that base destroyer. However, you might consider a wingman. Add on 85 points for a Colossus or something if you want to get some upfront damage or use it as an ablative wound, or maybe even a second one so you can double the effectiveness. This is a reactive timing unit where you can use it either in the middle or later of the turn. What you're looking to do is try and shoot those flyers down. You want to bring it in after they've brought their interceptors, and you're going to be looking to do that advance order. With the 24-inch advance order and the varied ranges on your weapons, 12, 16-inch, things like that, you're looking at a minimum threat range or maximum threat range of 36 inches. So you have the autocannon, which is going to give you about 2/3 of a wound. You have the assault cannon, which is going to give you about half a wound against a flyer. And your 2 Skystrike missiles are going to give you 2 wounds. You're looking at over 3 wounds effectiveness whenever you're shooting down those other flyers. So again, if we looked at a bomber squadron of 3 bombers, about 245 points for the initial squadron that we looked at, this 95-point unit can destroy them all in just 1 turn. Statistically average, too. The other variant of this is what I'm going to call the Tank Hunter variant. You simply replace those Skystrike missiles with the Hellstrike missiles, and you're going to have a similar effect. If you need something that's going to have a threat range of 36 inches and you're playing against a meta which is going to have a bunch of Vanquisher Leman Rushes, the Tank Hunter variant is the way to go. Those Leman Russes have no way to shoot you down, and unless they are hedging a lot into their anti-aircraft, and you are going to have a good way to deal with those Lemans. That's all I have for today. If you have any other Marauder builds that you think are pretty good, or maybe units that you think you can pair with these, let me know in the comments. As always, have a wonderful day. Click the thumbs up, like, subscribe, do all the fun YouTube normal stuff. I think there's a bell for a notification, something like that. Adieu.